Hey guys, let me quickly walk you through the topics that we are going to discuss in this video. So first we are going to look at servlets, the theory of servlets, and then we look at the life cycle of servlets and some programs with servlets along with cookies and session handling, etc. So let us start with Java servlets. So what do you mean by a servlet is that servlets are the server-side programming code. These programs they run on the web servers and they act like an intermediate between our website and our database. So it's just an intermediate code that is used to get a request from our browser and then give a corresponding response by getting data from the database if at all necessary. Then in this diagram you can see the how the servlet works. So a user who is using a web browser, when he clicks on something or he generates a request, so this request goes to the web server. Our web server in turn communicates with our servlet class. This servlet class finds the appropriate servlet program for our corresponding request and then executes that servlet program. So that servlet program is being dynamically built. It's a dynamic web page with the suitable response contents and then sent back to the web server. This web server in turn gives that data as a response to our web browser. There are two types of web server responses. One is a static response and another was a dynamic response. A static response means it consists just only of HTML codes. There is nothing that is going to be changing. That is just a raw coding. Everything is predefined. But in dynamic response, the HTML document itself is generated by a program in response to our HTTP request. Whereas in static response, the web page is already coded and it has been stored in our server. So when you click a button, it will just retrieve those data from the server. There will be nothing dynamic. Next, we can see the advantages of servlets are about it uses very less response time and the servlets are scalable, and of course servlets are Java and therefore they are platform independent and they are robust as well as they are object oriented. Where we can use these servlets is that we can use a servlet for processing and storing the data from the HTML form to our database and for providing dynamic contents, and it has a great usage in cookies and session tracking. Now we are going to look at lifecycle of servlet. The lifecycle of servlet basically consists of three methods: the initialize method, the service method, and the destroy method. So in this diagram, as you can take a look at this diagram, when our servlet program is getting loaded, our servlet class also gets loaded. When our servlet class gets loaded, it triggers this initialize method first. It creates a servlet instance and then it triggers this initialize method. Note that this initialize method is called only once in the lifecycle of a servlet. After calling this, it goes to the ready state. In this ready state, the servlet may call upon the service method several times depending on the type of service that is needed for the servlet. And then when all those services are completed and there is no longer need for this servlet, we can call the destroy method, which removes our servlet code from the memory. So now we are going to see a little bit of theory of the life cycle of servlets. So loading a servlet class is when a servlet class is loaded when the first request for the servlet is received by a web container. So whenever a web browser sends a request, that corresponding servlet class will be loaded first, and then a servlet instance is created. That is like just like creating an object. An object for that servlet is created, and these are done only once in the life cycle of a servlet. So the initialize method. So what this initialize method does is that it is called by this web container on the servlet instance. It is just used to initialize our servlet. Then we go for service methods. The containers calls the service method each time for the request for the servlet is received, and the service method will then call a do get method or a do post method, which we'll see in the further part of this video. The service method consists of two parameters. One is a request parameter, next one is a response parameter. Especially it is a servlet request and a servlet response. So this servlet request over here, let me highlight it for you. This servlet request is a class, is a servlet class, and servlet response is another servlet class, and create an object for request as servlet request, and we create an object for servlet response as response. And this servlet class will always throw two types of exceptions, that is a servlet exception and an IO exception. So you have to handle it by using the throws keyword, which we will discuss in the exception handling topics. Then we are going to, the destroy method is called whenever a servlet is to be removed from our memory, and all those cleanup activities are done when this method is called. And note that this method is called only once in the life cycle of the servlet. So the syntax for do get and do post methods that are called by our service methods are like say it has to be public, and it is, since it does not return anything, we are using a void over here. And then for do get, we have an HTTP servlet request and a HTTP servlet response. HTTP denotes our protocol through which this request is being sent and through which a response is being received, and it goes to the servlet program. So we use servlet request and the servlet response, and this throws some exceptions. As I said, servlet IO exception, servlet exception and IO exception, but in general you can handle this by giving just the name as exceptions. So similarly for do post, you will use the same parameters. The difference between the post and the get method is that the values that are sent through the get method will be displayed in our URL, whereas the values that are being sent through our post method will not be displayed in our URL. It provides hiding of a content. Now in this example, we are going to create a simple form with just one text area, set text area. So I have named the text box as user, and it is being written within a form with the method is equal to post, which means our data will not be displayed in our URL. And what the action should be done is check. So when I click on this submit button, it will go to my page called as check. Now this is the web.xml. If you are using an Eclipse or an NetBeans IDE, it will automatically be generated whenever you create a servlet class, so you need not bother about these type of codes. But even though this is just an XML file, so what you know, XML files like the starting tag name and ending tag name should be same. So whenever you start a tag, you have to end it by using a forward slash. So here we are starting a tag known as servlet, and within that servlet tag we have servlet name, which is named as check, that we have written in our form action method over here. And our servlet class name is my servlet, which I have saved this code. This is our servlet code, and I have saved it with the class name of my servlet, so I am specifying it. So now we have to map this servlet. How to map is, so you are creating another XML tag known as servlet mapping. Within the servlet mapping, I am saying the servlet name, which is the check, and you have to map this with our URL pattern. So when you click on this submit button over here, and when you see our URL, it will be written like our web page name / check. So this is our servlet code. First you have to import all the IO packages that are necessary, and servlet libraries, and also HTTP protocol libraries, and give the name of your class, and you have to always specify this extends HTTP servlet. We have to, since we are using a servlet code, we have to specify it. And then here I am using a post request post method, which consists of two parameters, a request and a response, and it throws some exceptions which are being handled by using the throws keyword. And now we are going to say that our response will be in the form of a HTML format. So I'm saying response, which is an object name of HTTP servlet response dot set content type. The content type is going to be text / HTML, and our encoding format is going to be UTF-8, as we use in every general HTML file. Now we we are going to create a print writer object, so print writer, and our object name is out, is equal to response dot get writer. Response dot get writer in the sense is going to get the value from us. So within the try block, we are going to request a parameter, say request dot get parameter of user. This user, you have to say, see this, note this name. This name is same as that name that we are given in our form. So we are requesting this parameter in our servlet file for further processing. So, and when we are saying request.get parameter, and we are storing it in this string known as user. Now we are going to print what we have entered in our form over here. So for that we are using the print writer object out dot println. And the advantage of servlet is that you can write HTML code also within the double quotes in the servlet. So here we are writing printing welcome plus our username which we have entered in our form with the heading 2 format. And by using finally block, we are closing all the connections that we have opened by saying that out dot close. So that's we are going to see about sessions.